Welcome to the IVF Journey with Dr. Michael Chapaman, the podcast for couples who struggle with infertility and want to fulfill their dreams of becoming parents. In this podcast, you'll learn actionable strategies to deal with infertility from Dr. Michael Chapaman, or Prof as he's affectionately known. Prof is the co-founder of IVF Australia and is a leading Australian infertility specialist who has helped over 3,000 couples realise their dreams of becoming parents. To access previous episodes packed with ideas, solutions and tips that actually work, head over to Dr. Chapaman's IVF podcast on iTunes. You can also ask questions by contacting Dr. Chapaman's rooms on 1800 111 483 or by emailing him michael.chapman@ivf.com.au.
That first cry of a baby born after the long journey of IVF remains one of the most beautiful experiences in the world. As an obstetrician and an IVF specialist, I've had the privilege of experiencing this over many thousands of times in my long career, but I still remain moved by each baby's first cry. It signifies the end of a long journey and the beginning of a new life. This is Professor Michael Chapaman, co-founder of IVF Australia and host of the IVF Journey podcast. Thanks for tuning in. To access all the previous episodes, head over to my website, www.theivfjourney.com, and select IVF Journey Podcast from the navigation menu. You'll also be able to find the various services that we provide at IVF Australia. Today we're going to look at the psychological aspects of infertility, and within the clinic, every IVF clinic in Australia has a counselling service provided within it. It's the rules of our accreditation require this. The counsellors are all members of an organisation called ANZICA, the Australian New Zealand Infertility Counselling Association, and they work together to have the highest levels of skill to allow our patients to be looked after. The IVF journey is a journey of ups and downs, and certainly very much emotions are put on edge. And so the need for counselling is vital. The counsellor in our particular clinic is Nicole, who's with us today, and we're going to delve into some of the issues that she deals with on a day-to-day basis and give us some insights into some strategies of how to cope. So, Nicole, hi.
Hi. Yes. So probably about half of the work I do would be the support counselling in providing patients with support, prior to starting IVF, during or afterwards as well. And I guess, as Professor Chapaman said, the psychological side of things, there's lots of high hopes and also disappointment. And so it can be described as a bit of an emotional roller coaster. Infertility, I guess, is considered a major life crisis, and one of the reasons for that is because it affects every area of one's life when going through IVF, not just physically, but emotionally, financially. It can affect relationships, partner, family, friends. It affects work and career, people's identity, people's hopes and dreams, their faith and spirituality, and also can create a lot of stress and anxiety and depression. And with the anxiety comes with it a lot of worries, and people quite often worry about one's health, and if they do achieve a pregnancy, the pregnancy and then the baby itself as well. People worry they may never become pregnant, never be a mum and dad, or if when they do become pregnant, worry about miscarriage, particularly if that's happened for them in the past, and the baby's health as well.
So the couples that come to see you for support counselling are generally those who have been referred by the specialist, by the GP, and sometimes obviously by the nurses, who probably deal with the patients more on a day-to-day basis than anybody, and they very early pick up signs of needing support.
Yeah, definitely. Quite often, like you said, I will get a referral from the nurses, and I might start by phone outreach and do a bit of phone support with them, and then arrange for them a time for them to come in if they would like further support. Yeah, the specialists, and also self-referral, and also just really encourage all patients to access the support. You know, it's a free service included in the cost of treatment. And yeah, I think the nurses and the doctors encourage this, and important for there not to be a stigma around accessing that.
Yeah,
support.
I mean, I think that's an issue, is that particularly career women and their husbands are a little bit reluctant to admit that they're not coping.
Yeah. And definitely the service is for partners as well, and we do couples counselling. We've had mums come in as well to support particularly the women going through treatment. So it is a service for everyone.
So what's the commonest anxiety that people have, that your patients have?
Yeah, I think people have a lot of anxiety when they've gone through the treatment process. They may have had an embryo transfer. There's a 2-week wait.
Yes, a terrible time.
Yeah. In which they, I guess, have had an intense process of IVF with a lot of doing, and then there's the waiting to have a blood test to find out if they're pregnant. That's one of the most common times to experience anxiety. And it's important to know that anxiety to certain levels is really normal during this time. Yep. So that would be the most common time for anxiety. Quite often another difficult time is coping with others through the treatment process. Right. And people can get triggered by pregnancy announcements, seeing pregnant bellies, and just dealing with friends and others' pregnancies.
Often they're keeping it secret.
That's right. It's anxiety provoking for people. Yeah.
And then obviously the majority of patients, sadly still, the majority of patients that have an embryo transfer are not going to end up pregnant. And that must be a horrible moment for them.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you'd be aware, Professor Chapman, based on people's age. The age of the egg is often the best predictor of pregnancy. And I guess part of the counselling we do is about providing people with information to help them make an informed decision. And some of the counselling we do for some people is looking at other options, both internally within IVF Australia, whether someone might need help with the use of donor sperm or donor egg, have an embryo program, or options like adoption, foster care, or looking at living a child-free life rather than childlessness.
Yeah, so taking people through that is an important step, because what we ultimately want is people going away happy. Now, that may be a child, but it may be the realistic view is that they will be childless. So that takes us on to the other area of your work, which counselling is mandatory as part of the donor process. That's donor sperm, donor eggs, donor embryos. And you spend quite a lot of your time talking to the donors and also to the recipients, and to them both together these days.
Yes. Yeah, so we would meet with the recipients and the donors individually over a number of sessions, and also do a joint session after that. And I guess the counselling we do surrounding the donor options is what we call implications counselling. So it's quite structured counselling, and there's a lot of information we need to get through, including looking at one's motivation, getting some background information, going through all the legal issues. So, for example, the New South Wales legislation around the donor register, the family limit, and the Human Tissue Act. We'll go through the procedure and treatment matters, and also look at psychosocial offspring implications. So looking at how one might tell the child later on down the track. But basically it's providing people with information to help them make an informed decision about whether that option is right for them or not.
Yeah. So these two areas obviously keep you busy.
They do.
Let's go back a little to the stress, and what sort of strategies do you have to encourage women, couples to help reduce the pain?
A lot of what we talk about in the support counselling are strategies that will enhance someone's psychological resilience, help them master the new reality that they're in, and increase their life satisfaction. And some of the skills that we go through, I guess the new IT word is mindfulness, and basically stems from Buddhist thought, and it's about trying to focus on the present. So when someone's worrying about things of the past or into the future, we try to get them to come back just to take one day, one step at a time, and focus on the present. Other strategies which have been used in the past particularly are cognitive behaviour therapy, CBT, ACT, acceptance commitment therapy. And, they're just different ways at looking at people's thoughts, trying to challenge unhelpful thoughts and looking at better ways to cope. We also, I guess one of the most important things is exercise. And we do encourage doing some exercise to increase mood and also decrease anxiety. Along with that, there might be breathing exercises, meditation. But really, I guess it's just quite often people are very tough on themselves. So it's just about being kinder to themselves, doing things they enjoy and, trying to live life as they usually would, because a lot of the time when people go through IVF, they stop doing those things they enjoy and they're a real protective mechanism.
Okay, all right. So just to tie it all together then, the listener to this podcast is probably thinking, if they've been through it, I recognise all this. If they're just beginning the journey, they're going to be potentially experiencing it. So being prepared, I suppose, is the first thing for those starting the journey. What would you say, what sort of things, before you go into a cycle, what should you be thinking?
Yeah, I guess it'd be good to have a conversation, with people surrounding them. Having good support systems is really important. Talking to your partner about who you're going to tell in the process, and I guess having what we call fertility comebacks. Sitting down and working out exactly what you want to say to people, whether you're telling family, whether you're telling friends, whether you're telling work. It could be good to tell people something. So I guess that you get that support going through the process.
Okay. From a doctor's perspective, one of the things we try very hard to do is to create appropriate expectations. So what I find is that people going into a cycle, you can say 20 times that there's the chances of success are 30, 40%, which means 60 to 70% are not going to be successful. But no matter how many times I say that, I'm sure couples go in believing they'll be in the positive side. But preparing for that
definitely
is an issue.
Yeah. And, I think the doctor's been assertive about those expectations. And I guess our job as counsellors is just to gently remind them that, yes, it is important to be hopeful going into the process, but also realistic. And looking at those success rates and flipping them on their head is really important. Yeah.
And so the things that you would be saying to somebody, you've mentioned mindfulness, so perhaps just finish off with those sort of tips on what to do.
Yeah, so with mindfulness and ACT, I guess the biggest thing is acceptance of emotions, good or bad. There's a range of emotions you'll experience: sadness, anger, denial, frustration, questioning, why me, jealousy, envy. And it's really just acceptance that there's no good and bad emotions. They're just all emotions, and it's important to let themselves express that emotion. And I think, acceptance of what they're going through.
So when you sit with a couple, you do get, this is an opportunity for them to tell you about those emotions, I suppose.
Yeah.
And just getting it off your chest must be a major
relief, definitely, but also to just normalise it for them, that it is normal to go through these emotions. And, as long as they're not acting out on that behaviour, expressing any emotion is okay.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Nicole. And I hope that's helpful to people. And my message would be is to seek help. Don't go it alone. Every IVF clinic, there are these skilled workers skilled professionals who can help you get through this. And don't forget that you can access all the previous episodes by going to our website, www.theivfjourney.com, and select IVF Journey podcast from the navigation menu.
Thank you for listening to the IVF Journey with Dr. Michael Chapaman, the podcast which helps couples negotiate their way through the IVF journey, all the way to parenthood. You can also ask questions by contacting Dr. Chapaman's rooms on 1800 111 483 or by emailing him michael.chapaman@ivf.com.au.